Welcome, folks, to another sidetrack of Derailed Trains of Thoughts. My name is Timothy Deal.
My name is Nick Hayden.
And these are, of course, these little side things. Sometimes they're bits and pieces that didn't fit into an episode, or other times we're doing something else completely different. And today, I've been wanting to do this with Nick for a while. I think we hinted at it in the last episode. We are coming up on the 20th anniversary of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the movie version, film adaptation. It came out.
Not that rotoscope version.
No, not the weird half animated one. The one with Elijah Wood and Sean Astin and all those guys. But yeah, it came out in 2001 when I was a senior in high school, which makes me feel kind of old.
Yeah, we were in college.
That was, you were in, what, your junior year of college?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay, well, I'm just doing math. That's what I was guessing. But yeah, so listeners of our podcast know that we have a deep appreciation of Tolkien. He's been a big influence for us, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would agree with that.
So how did you feel about this movie when it came out, Nick?
My wife's laughing because it was there. Like everyone was ranting about it. I watched it once. I complained about things that weren't like the book, and then I largely forgot about it. So yeah, I was one of those everyone else loved it, and it was good. It was well done, but I read the book.
Sure. And so you haven't actually seen this since then, right?
I don't think so. I think I've saw each of the movies once.
Wow. So that's very interesting because so I had read the books, or at least I should say, I read The Fellowship of the Ring the summer before the movie came out. Mm-hmm. I had read The Hobbit the year beforehand. And
I see the movie of that one.
And I liked The Hobbit okay, but I wasn't
The Hobbit's great.
By it. Well, I mean, yeah. But it was in a different time.
Yeah.
But The Lord of the Rings, I fell deep into that. Originally, I was like, oh, okay, I'll just read one of these each summer before the movie comes out.
Yeah.
It'll be cool. Then I finished The Fellowship of the Ring. I was like, I can't wait I got to keep going. This is amazing. So I did continue reading, but went to the school year.
Yeah.
I was still in the middle of Return to the King. I hadn't actually finished, maybe I was halfway through it. When I saw this movie, which kind of gives it, well, I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I remember it gave the ending kind of this poignancy because Frodo's and Sam's journey isn't over yet, and neither is mine in the book where I'm reading. But anyway, so I didn't have quite as long of a history with the book when the movie came out as you did.
No, I think I had probably read it twice before the movie came out. I'm trying to think. I've read Lord of the Rings or listened to it or some version probably 3 or 4 times or lifetime maybe. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably right.
For me, I fell deep into this was finding a second Star Wars with these movies. I was immediately fascinated with the behind the scenes stuff, and as the extended editions came out, I never bought the theatrical versions. I got the extended ones. And we'll talk about this a little bit more after so I guess we kind of launched into this and forgot to tell you listeners what we're doing. We're about to watch The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring together, which will be fun because you and I have never watched this together before. And then after we watch the movie, we're going to share our thoughts, kind of like we would on the Weekly Hijack. Now, we will be watching the extended edition, which is important because for a lot of people, the extended edition is the definitive way you watch The Lord of the Rings, especially The Fellowship of the Ring, in my opinion, because the extended version really helped this movie a lot. The additional half hour they added to this helped it feel less okay, let's hurry from location A to location B to location C. It felt like it had more room to breathe in each of those locations. So yeah, it was the 3 years these movies came out and then in the theaters and then collecting the extended editions afterwards. It was kind of a magical time, especially since that was a period where I was seriously looking into going into filmmaking, or at least I was thinking along those lines. And so all the bonus features on the DVDs were really fun to explore. But let's move on to the meat of the discussion. Although we do want to make notes. One other thing. We're in Nick's living room.
Hello.
And
live from Nick's living room. This is not Derailed Trains of Thought.
A sidetrack. But there are a lot of other people here that aren't here. All these little smaller life forms.
These hobbits over here.
Who might these be, Nick?
Well, these are Proudfoots so I have my children here and my wife, obviously. But Fyodor, who just had a birthday and is 12.
Happy birthday, Fyodor.
And Serenity, who's 10, and Mercy, who will not be watching the whole movie with us, but who is 5. She's going to be 6 in a month.
Okay, yo, hi, kids.
And as per my children, as I demand from them, they are not talkative in the company of people they don't know as well.
As you demand
And
them?
I demand them.
I
No.
doubt that very much. Now, Theo, you read all the Lord of the Rings books, didn't you? Most of them?
I think he read the whole first book. Yeah. And then we've read as a family all except the second half of Return of the King. We're actually on Mount Doom right now.
Oh, nice.
And it's been a long delay.
Sure. Life gets busy.
But yeah, we have read. They have all been exposed to the first 2.5 books.
Okay. So, have you seen pictures from the movies? Do you know kind of what to expect here?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. Well, you're in for a journey, I would say. I'd say an unexpected journey, but we've been talking about doing this for a while. So that's a Hobbit reference.
They're in Batkin.
Okay. Anything else we need to mention before we get started here?
Not that I can think of. I know Natasha has seen these far more often than I have. She actually recently, as in like last year, rewatched all the extendeds, didn't you?
I think so.
So she'll have a different perspective than I will.
I watched the extended editions, the director's cut.
Mm-hmm.
I rewatched them last year.
Cool. It's funny. I went through a period of time when I did watch these a lot, and then at some point it's like, okay, I feel like I've seen this a bit much, and it starts getting repetitive. And like at the same time, I also didn't want it to replace the Tolkien version in my mind, so I kind of paused it for a while. So I think the last time I probably saw this was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. It's been a little while myself, but I do have a lot more experience with these. So we will see how that goes. So this should be fun. So stay tuned. We're now going to pause, and we will get back to you after we've watched at least some of it. I'm not sure if we may come back in the middle of something so that if the kids need to get to bed.
Yeah.
But here we go. Okay, we are back.
Hello.
We're back 3.5 hours later.
Yes.
Or so. Just FYI, the kids liked it, but they were ready to go to bed.
They were kind of like, well, not only was it late for them, but I think it's going to take a while to process everything.
Sure.
Probably. So they're like, yes, we liked it. Can't think anymore.
Way up past their bedtime, and
yeah.
like probably the microphones are a little intimidating. But
Yeah. Well, and then Mercy was up for not half of it, but an hour and so. She was really into it.
she was.
Yeah.
She only didn't seem too alarmed. She was a little upset that Natasha made her go to bed.
Yeah, she really doesn't get phased much. I mean, we have not let her watch a lot of things, but the little things that are like, she just like whatever. So,
well, every kid's different.
Exactly, it is. It's very true.
Well, this was, for me, it was a lot of fun, man. It's been a while. How did you feel about this in your second time ever seeing Fellowship of the Ring?
I was trying to think through it and watching it. I say I've only seen it once, and from my memory, that's true. But so much of its imagery is so iconic that I wonder, do I remember it that well from 20 years ago? Or did I see parts of it? I mean, obviously, some of it's been on like memes and things since the beginning of time.
Yes. One does not simply walk into Mordor.
Yeah. But I wonder if I had seen it another time. I just don't remember. Which, anyways, doesn't need here nor there. But I've not seen it for a very long time.
Or maybe you saw bits and pieces of it while Natasha was watching it or something.
And if nothing else, cinematography is super iconic. I mean, it does.
It really
very,
is.
very good. And visually, it's. Not only is it very impactful, I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, but it's pretty darn true to my memories of the book.
Yeah.
Generally.
Sure. I think it holds up really well at 20 years old.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't feel 20 years old. I mean, there's a couple slow-mo pieces that feel a little older. They wouldn't do it now, but it doesn't feel old.
Just every now and then, well, I mean, I think even a lot earlier, I remember thinking, okay, a lot of the CG looks good. This part is like, oh, okay, that kind of looks like a CG Legolas kind of.
Oh, yeah, I know it every once in a while.
Every once in a while, but for the most part, yeah, no, it's aged extremely well. Looking back, it really is an astonishing that this movie turned out as well as it did.
Yes.
I mean, like, there are things that even I will nitpick about, but like the fact that, I mean, I think about like how this movie was made in like late 90s and there wasn't anything like this out there.
No, and I think, like, I remember even, I don't know when I decided, but I always liked this one of the three movies best. I think partly the Fellowship of the Ring book is the easiest to translate to screen for one. I mean, I think the other two Two Towers is messy and a lot of talking.
Yeah, you mean the original?
The book.
Yeah.
The book.
Yeah.
And the Return of the King is a very odd structure. It works for a book, but like you're trying to translate it to a movie, it becomes like odd.
Yeah, it's true.
And they mess Sam up. But
in the Return of the King?
yeah,
Well, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah,
they
it
send
doesn't
him away
matter.
for a little bit.
yeah, it's like just give him his awesomeness because he should be awesome at all times. Because Sam is the entire awesomeness of Lord of the Rings. But anyways,
But yeah,
I mean, quite frankly, like old college grumpy me, would nitpick all kind of stuff. And at this point, I don't care to.
because we've lived with adaptations from Hollywood for a lot longer, and I think in some ways audiences have come to understand the differences between the mediums. About there's certain things that like how you can explain things in certain times, and so scenes may play out slightly differently. I mean, I know the Tolkien estate isn't hugely fond of these movies because I think they made them all blockbustery up, and
and honestly, if I was going to complain, the later ones do more of the blockbustery, crazy fights, surfing Legolas, sort of things, which I can understand. Christopher Tolkien spent his whole life dealing with the words of Tolkien, not liking.
Yeah.
And I lean that way too. I told Natasha before we watched it that, I think it's the Hollywoodization of Tolkien that annoyed me most when I first watched it. Now, having said that, I think Fellowship of the Ring does the least amount of that because it cuts a lot of stuff out, but it doesn't really add anything.
Well, like you
really.
said, it is the most straightforward, probably the easiest of the books to adapt in some ways because it doesn't have simultaneous these things happening in different places, and like the book is straightforward beginning to end,
and it's structured and the characters are strong, and they don't, they did a pretty good job not trying to give. Like, so I'm watching real time. First thing, they're trying to give all this like angsty backstory to all your main characters. Like, why are you doing that? And they don't do that. I mean, except possibly if, read more into Aragorn than you get in the book. But it's all kind of there, if you...
Yeah, they do play up the reluctant king aspect way more than is in the book, or if it's even in the book.
Because I know he's reluctant in the sense that he doesn't want to take it before it's his time.
Yeah.
But I don't ever get the sense that he doesn't feel he's worthy. I mean, he basically walks around knowing he's worthy of it.
Yeah, I don't think... And I remember that being a nitpick that I had. Like, I don't think Aragorn ever doubted that he would become the king and doing all the stuff like he does in this one.
Well, because they want to give a little bit of that. Because what I like is like with the Hobbits, they don't give a lot. They don't necessarily highlight too much. They'll like try to give them some deep character progression or anything. They're just because
they're
Tolkien
hobbits.
doesn't care about. I mean, Tolkien doesn't have character progression in a modern sense.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, it's not progression in the modern sense. There's a lot of substance there
and growth.
The
There's growth and change, but it's not in that sort of therapeutic sense that we have in the modern era, where you start. Lost is what is built bread and butter.
Work through your
issues, and there's no issues in Tolkien.
Yeah, not in
the modern sense.
And I think that's another reason why it's such a remarkable movie, that even though it has some of those modern trappings and you give a larger role to Arwen.
Yeah, but in this book not, and this one not as much.
But the thing is, it's very earnest.
It is. It is.
Like, this is an era like when Shrek had just come out, which had completely skewered the Disney fairy tale, and we're having movies like Austin Powers and Super Crass and all this kind of stuff. And this movie comes out in the middle of all that, and in a lot of ways, I think like revitalizes fantasy.
Well, and like
on pop culture,
it's it's substantially epic, not in the sense of like trying to be. Like some superhero movies, like we complain about in Shang-Chi, like let's make it as epic CG as possible. It's not epic in that sense. It's epic in like there's stakes and there's a world and
it never tries to like downplay its own mythology or try to put on an ironic air to it. It's like, no, this is all high stakes stuff, and these hobbits, they're silly, but they're also very lovable, and there's very earnest.
And well, I was thinking about that. The humor is real human. Like, some people complain about the Marvel Universe having that always sort of like that.
Self-depreciating.
And there's none of that here. This is, like you said, very, very honest, everyone's fully, and which honestly you got to do to make this work. You got to be fully, you got to be all in it. Mm-hmm. And I think all the characters sell that. I think, and all the characters are basically who they should be. Yeah. In this, Boromir's perfect Boromir, and
and no character feels off. I remember Elrond, I kind of feeling like this feels a little too Mr. Anderson.
It doesn't feel quite as much being so much distance from Matrix, luckily. Now.
Yeah, not quite. It doesn't have quite the same effect, but he still comes across as a sterner Elrond than I remember from the book.
There's parts of Elrond, and even Rivendell that we don't get, which we shouldn't, because it's long enough as it is. Just the songs and the meals and the, that sort of stuff.
It is interesting for me, too, also watching the extended versions, because I'm always, for as long as I've lived with, and I haven't watched the theatrical one in ages, but I'm still always aware of when certain scenes have been extended or things added.
But yeah, like what were they? I mean, I have not seen it for ages and ages. I wouldn't even know.
Well, the one part I'd be very tempted to check out again sometime is the beginning was substantially different. Like I remember the first time you see older Bilbo in the Shire is not until Gandalf knocks at his door.
Oh,
that whole bit of him writing.
I did feel like it was okay. I had a vague sense there was something there, but I didn't know. I have to give super credit too, because most movies, if they're going to condense anything, condense the beginning of a book, so get them on the road,
right?
And they spend time. Again, on one hand, it's smart too because there's a lot of information to download,
yeah.
But they spend substantial time with the 91st birthday and all that Sackville Baggins stuff, which I guess some of that was probably cut. Some of the Sackville Baggins or not?
The Sackville Baggins, I'm not sure that was in there, or even the scene with like Bilbo pulling Frodo aside and kind of saying goodbye. I don't think that was in the theatrical version.
Okay.
And also, just anytime they really put a lot of emphasis on like the song or something, that's an extended version thing, like Aragorn singing about Beren and Luthien, which is awesome.
Yeah, they did almost
the lament for Gandalf.
I think they did name drop, like you mentioned, almost every chapter title which we actually get in this. I mean, outside. I mean, if they skipped the chapter, we didn't get the chapter title drop, but.
A shortcut to mushrooms.
I remember
Riddle
in
that
the Dark. I like that. That's a allusion back to Hobbit and Golem.
Yep. It's fun, all the little Easter eggs. And it is impressive with as dense of the mythology that Middle-earth has, that they're able to name drop, much like Tolkien would himself, just name drop certain things that like reference to the bigger background of Middle-earth. And those of you who know the Silmarillion know what they're talking about. It's like a Balrog of Morgoth.
Yeah.
Oh, I know about Morgoth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
And I have to say, it's pretty impressive. And I guess, didn't they film all at once back in the day?
Yeah.
That more than, people complain and say it's the Star Wars sequels, that there's a very obvious arc that gets started here. Like all the pieces about, some of the movement they have with giving more Saruman or the Uruk-hai or some of the,
details about they mention a Palantir, which I think even Tolkien doesn't actually talk about the Palantir until
Two Towers or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe Return whenever Pippin finds it.
Because Lord of the Rings is set up very much from the Hobbit's point of view. You don't know more. And again, it's probably smart as a movie to give the wider world. I'm sure college me was like, oh, we should just done it like that. But I think it's a smart move for make a movie version of it.
And I mean, it's very clever too. Like, we get little tastes of Gondor politics, even though we won't actually go to Gondor till the third movie. Mm-hmm. And then whenever they can tease little things like that, it's like, this will have an effect, maybe not in this movie, but down the road.
Like, they're pulling down the trees, tear them all up. Obviously, that's becomes a big deal with the ends.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Again, all of which we get told in Tolkien. But Tolkien is very much in his style. And again, it's not written for a movie. It's written for kind of the, Beowulf, Odyssey style, where you
discover things.
Not only that, but almost everything's situated as some guy comes in, tells you a tale, and then you get caught up. I mean, it's very old Englishy sort of style like that. When we read what's the Green Man?
The Green Knight, Sir Gawain.
Yeah, a lot of that's set up as like you get there, tell a story. You get there, you tell a story. This sort of that was a whole different
style.
A style which you can't. Well, you could, but it'd be artsy to translate into a movie.
Right. This is a good blending of old and modern styles of storytelling.
I think probably I was just trying to analyze as I'm watching it. Why it didn't have a emotional connection with me watching it. Again, I was especially like, but I think partly it's more just my personality style in the sense that I think my brain does not work particularly visually.
Oh, that's
and so it works very linguistically and idea-wise. Mm-hmm. So like I read Tolkien and then I care almost more about how it sounds than about translating into plot. Uh-huh. This is Tolkien plot done very well, but college me would have been like, but you miss all the beauty of the the delivery of it. Because
Sure.
a different delivery, and I'm not a visual delivery person generally. And I think that might be part of how I'm set up versus other people.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm in the middle because, I mean, I've always had a problem with like settling on one art form, but like
you're very visual. I mean, you did the whole video editing thing. Like,
Yeah.
you've had me try to come up with ideas for like logos and stuff. Like, my mind doesn't work properly.
It's interesting the different things you'll look at. For some reason, this time I was more aware of when the camera was moving. Sometimes, like, oh, that's interesting because that's something I never used to think about, and it's still not necessarily the first thing I do. But it's fun. I've seen this so many times. Like, I was like, oh man, I know exactly what they're gonna say next.
Yeah.
So it's just because, this movie just was so important for a period of time, and it still is. Honestly, like it definitely is a big part of who I am.
And this movie should show up in lists of important movies. Like, is it still? I'm assuming it should still be part of AFI's.
Well, they don't really update their things much, but I think it showed up in the top 100 lists the second time they did it.
Okay,
because they did like a top 100 like all time.
Did they
twice.
do the whole series or just one of the movies when they did that? I mean, that's a hard thing with these movies.
Yeah,
like, I don't watch like long movies very often, but this, I have to say, is for being 3.5 hours, paced very nicely. Mm-hmm. There's only about 2 things I'm like, you could have cut that down some, but
is one of them the Arwen chase scene?
No, actually, no. I mean,
that's the one part I always kind of tune out because it's kind of boring to me. It's like just horses.
Yeah, I mean, it is legitimately not that she did in the book, but I mean, there's a whole. It's not, well, see, that seemed pretty short to me. Because I remember the last Lord of the Rings I watched was the rotoscoped one, and the chase towards the ford lasts literally forever. It is the longest, painfulest scene ever. So this was like pretty quick.
When did you see that last?
Oh, it's been years now. But
okay.
Did you remember watching it, Natasha? It was painful.
Yeah.
No. I feel like in Khazad-dûm, there's so much going on. You got Balrogs and everything. Mm-hmm. Why spend 5 minutes jumping the staircase? I mean, I don't think, at least for me, it adds any tension. You already have a Balrog. You already have, I mean, do it in like 2 minutes. Don't do like, I don't know.
5. I can see that. I don't know. It works for me for some reason. I'm not sure why that works, whereas like other things that they add in Two Towers don't as much. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it worked for me the first time, but it's storyboarded very well, I think.
Well, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just one of those things like, we got a Balrog coming after you. Like, I don't know. It seems like an added, it just,
an added set piece.
An odd added set piece in a whole movie that's just been moving like clockwork since the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, well, that's my main one.
Sorry, jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
But I thought of another extended feature thing. I think in the original theatrical version, the only gift of Galadriel's we see is the Light of Eärendil.
Which is the most important. You have to have that one.
The most important. But it's very nice to see all the other gifts. There's a lot of good character moments. And again, the stuff they added to Lothlorien, I remember Lothlorien felt like a weird pit stop in the middle in the theatrical version. This one felt like, this is a location we're going to delve into and spend some time in. I was reminded at some point, I think some YouTube commenters pointed out that Fëanor once asked Galadriel for a strand of hair, and she turned him down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she knew he was bad news. The
fact that that's deep diving right there.
And then the fact that she gave Gimli 3. It's like somewhere in Barad-dûr or wherever evil elves go. He's shaking his fist like, Galadriel.
Natasha, you're here. Did you want to add anything to your rewatching? I mean, you've seen it more recently than either of us. You have to come closer, though, if you want to say anything.
I guess when I watch movies with my kids, I'm much more conscious of just things that I'm worried about them, things that I'm worried about them seeing. So I guess this time watching it was different for me in that sense. I was constantly checking like, hey, are you guys okay with this? I have a 10-year-old girl here and a 12-year-old boy. I was less concerned about him. But
a lot of orc body parts getting flung around sometimes.
Like just the grotesqueness of the orcs, kind of the stuff of nightmares. But
outside of them being grotesque, there's not much blood or gore.
No,
for all the fighting, which is good because, there's not in Tolkien either.
No. It is a different experience seeing stuff that rather than just reading. But
he gets off heads in the book too.
Yeah, it's true.
But, I mean, asking afterwards, I think at least Serenity seemed okay. Like,
I bet
she wasn't too bothered by it, she said. So, yeah.
They may have seen something worse in a video game at some point. Well, I don't know if they haven't much exposure to...
Skyrim be the closest thing to this.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, it's different than being in your house. It's different than being in the dark movie theater.
That's true. With the big screen.
Yeah. And there's a different perspective of what you're more detached from it to a certain extent.
Yeah. For good and bad. I mean, the opening prologue stuff, I still always remember like it just sounds really cool in the surround sound. I feel it in the water. I smell it.
We do have to make a note. The one thing that I've always, even my complaining self, always loved about Lord of the Rings is the soundtrack is genius.
It is a great soundtrack. And man, I forgot how much I could recognize themes. Oh yeah, I remember. Oh, here's that part. And
the ring theme is almost my favorite. I love that. But I mean, obviously you have the orc theme and you have the Shire theme.
The Shire theme is fantastic. And the whole Sam and Frodo scene music is wonderful.
Yep. I mean, they do all the locations well, but the Shire and Moria are especially well done, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, real sense of place there.
I mean, because Moria is just just a cool location no matter how you cut it, even in the book. I mean, it's a long time in the book, I think. They're running around in the dark.
It's funny. This is the first time I feel like I noticed some of the area near Amon Hen. I was like, that looks very similar to the area that they're running through at the beginning of Two Towers.
Okay.
Which, there's only so many. There's a lot of landscapes in New Zealand apparently, but man, that whole Shire scene is just like, yeah, this is why suddenly New Zealand became a major tourist industry because of this scene. Because I think you can actually go, like, it wasn't originally a set, but then at some point I think they made it like they made Hobbiton and is a regular tourist attraction now.
That sounds right. Tell me, Tim, since you watch it more, it seemed like when we first see Gimli show up at the Rivendell, there's a gray dwarf there, isn't that?
Oh, is it Balin or
I think it's not Balin.
Not Balin because he's dead.
Yeah,
but he's one of the dwarves.
Yeah, I think so because there's one of them that knew Bilbo at the meeting. They never name drop him, but I just thought it was interesting that they were detailed enough. Yeah, you can tell they spent a lot of time that they cared to do it.
Right. Well, I mean, you've got all the maps in Bilbo's office that
are all legitimate Tolkien maps.
And I think like the dwarven lettering is from the book, and so they've got the whole door at the Mines of Moria, which I find confusing that they use Elvish on that door. Now I think about it, but
yeah, it seems like I think there's a reason in the book. I think, but I don't remember now. I think there is, but I don't remember now. I feel like that was like the commerce elf. I mean, again. They were my Mithril. I mean,
yeah, it was probably from a period of time when there was better cooperation between them.
Yeah,
I mean, dwarves and elves have always had kind of a rocky, no pun intended, relationship, but it probably has its ups and downs.
Yeah,
but anyway, trying to think if there's any other small things.
When we hijack, say, a TV show, you kind of analyze, but like this is just a complete whole and. It fits together. I mean, there's very few parts that that doesn't work there.
Yeah. Yeah. It holds up really well. I don't want to slam what they did with Arwen too much because it makes sense. I mean, she's an important character for Aragorn.
And again, and I don't normally defend Arwen, but the long-standing, like, why is she here? But I guess you're making the intelligent choices as making a movie. Arwen's almost strictly just talked about or in the background in the book. To give her a face and a presence.
And it does make sense to bring her in instead of whoever. I don't even remember what the name of the elf is that shows up with horses.
Yeah, and they're cousins of Elrond or something like that.
Yeah, and it's like, why not just use Arwen? That makes sense.
Yeah.
The sequence itself, like I've always felt that like if you want him, come and claim him is like the most cringeworthy line. In the
and like she comes in and she's like glowing more than like any other elf on the planet right there. I mean, they really play her up.
At that moment, I think Frodo is hallucinating, so that kind of works.
But I mean...
And I'm always like, why did you take Frodo off the horse, Arwen? You need to get him to Rivendell, not sit there and cry for a second.
Yeah, that whole... Yeah, everything... Yeah, I would go
So,
with that.
I mean, it's always funny, like, they do a fantastic job with so much of. I mean, this is a hard thing to adapt, and they did a great job with a lot of it. So anytime they do something just kind of off, it's like, well, why?
Why did you do that? Yeah, I had more of those. It was Two Towers or something. Just like, why did you do that? And it's such a shame, which is as close as this is in many ways. Outside just cutting off some stuff, which, hey, I've you gotta get rid of things.
You know, a movie won't make Tom Bombadil make any sense.
No, no, it's better not to do Tom Bombadil, despite purists. But like, why do we have 3 movies for The Hobbit? It makes me so frustrated. Give me a 3-hour Hobbit movie if you're going to do it.
That is
I know that has nothing to do with here now, but it just, it seems like the more Peter Jackson is a good director.
Yeah.
It just seems like the more he did, the more he just wanted to stuff it full of more stuff.
Well, and I don't even know how much that was his fault. There was like the studio's like, we want to have another event. We want another trilogy.
Okay.
Like originally he wasn't even supposed to be the director of it.
Oh, I got
like
you.
I think at one point Guillermo del Toro was going to do it, and he dropped out. And so eventually Peter Jackson's like, well, okay, I guess I'll do it. And it was, from what I've heard, it was just a rushed affair. He did not have the time he needed to prepare for that film because he was trying to do. It was not the same thing.
Yeah, I didn't pay much attention. I watched one of them and like,
yeah. At some point, I would love to watch. I know that there is a fan edit that's called the Tolkien edit of The Hobbit that I think is probably puts the whole trilogy in like one actual feature length movie.
Because the Rankin Bass is still the best Hobbit adaptation, straight up.
But
yeah, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, obviously Elijah Wood does great Frodo.
Yeah, the cast is aside
Sam
from maybe
is
Elrond,
amazing all around, always.
Aside from maybe Elrond, it's a perfect casting.
He does look elf-like.
Who, Frodo?
No, Elrond.
Oh yes, yeah, true.
But
I'll give you that. It is kind of funny. I've been listening to Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan's podcast.
Oh yeah. I can't see him without seeing Charlie right now yet.
Because we're so fresh from Lost.
Yeah.
But I've been listening to that, and it's crazy how much of their own personalities made it into Merry and Pippin, and it works.
It works.
They're a lot of fun together. But yeah, these movies, they are something special. I feel like they're one of the factors that made it being a nerd cool in the last 20 years. It brought fantasy and speculative fiction era of respectability that it had never had before.
Now, Tim, dare I ask? So this is also the beginning of people wanting to make Tolkien things.
Mm-hmm. By Tolkien things, you mean like fantasy things, or
no? I mean
Tolkien
like,
specifically.
Tolkien specifically, like we got the Hobbit movies, and now we have Amazon. Do you have any interest in that thing at all?
Not really.
Okay. I just want. I don't.
To
either.
be honest, I don't trust. I don't trust it.
No, I don't trust it. No, and
like there's almost nothing that Amazon has made in terms of TV that's like, yeah, that sounds like something I want to watch.
And like of all the age, like
I mean, I get why they're doing it in the second age because there's that much room for like they come up with stuff.
It's like also like the dark pagan worship era.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how do you do a story about like presumably.
It's the downfall of Numenor. I would assume that what the whole story is,
well,
right? Or not?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on how. Like, it seems like they want to do multiple seasons of it. So maybe they're going to do it while Numenor is still in its prime.
Well, yeah.
No Amazon Prime punishment. But
I think what this show, Fellowship of the Rings, does well, but also shows that it's very hard to adapt.
Yeah.
Middle Earth well. I mean, because you can turn it into like the video game, like the Middle Earth video games, and there's.
Which I was reminded of certain sequences of the games I used to play a lot, but yeah.
But it becomes with a lot of work. I think Tolkien, Middle Earth stuff becomes very easily into Hollywoodized, just giant battle, things, which is the world, but in some ways the spirit of Tolkien taken out of it. I think that can happen. Not this movie, I don't think. Mm-hmm. But I think the farther it goes, or you put in less capable hands, what happens to it.
Yeah, I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is largely inspired from Lord of the Rings, and that's taking a certain part of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings,
and a certain genius of Tolkien, but not the complete genius of Tolkien.
Right. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, but you're going to get that with any popular work. I feel like you're going to have your imitators, and we would love to see more people pull out the the philosophy of Lord of the Rings, and not just the surface level philosophy.
Yeah. But I don't like, sometimes you and I will joke about making some artsy Silmarillion Netflix series, but honestly, most of it is probably not filmable.
No,
because especially in Silmarillion, his style is written in such a stylized manner.
Yeah, it belongs on the written page.
It belongs because he was a philologist.
Yeah. Not a linguist, philologist.
Anyways, I thought this was enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. And I would say even one thing that is different with the films than reading the book, the elves come across differently.
You can't, and that was one of the things I complained about way back when. At this point, they're just different mediums. I think I'm just used to that. But you just can't communicate the elves visually, I don't think, as he writes them. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can. I can't. I don't think it's easy.
It's one of those things that's almost easier because it's an abstract idea in the mind.
Yeah,
in some ways,
and just the way Tolkien used certain words is to communicate ideas that are beyond visual.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, like I said, I love the Lothlorien stuff.
Yeah, it was nice.
It's cool. It's just different.
Yeah,
but
I do have to say that when I read the Lord of the Rings to the kids now, which we have been going through, and we're almost through the third book, The Return of the King, I use the voices from these movies to the best of my ability. My voices are totally inspired by these movies. So, I mean, yeah, I see a lot of the movies when I read the books now, just because, I don't know, I've probably seen the movies more than I've read the books at this point.
Well, it's a smaller time commitment.
It is.
As long as these are, it probably is still a smaller time commitment.
This director's cut does not have Gandalf's saxophone solo, though.
Oh, man. As soon as the kids saw Gandalf's face, even my youngest, she's my 5-year-old, she only saw it up to a certain point of the movie. But she was like, she put her hand over her mouth and this big grin on her face. She's like,
this is the context. This is where that comes from. Oh, man. It's funny, our meme culture, what it has done to some of our movies.
Yeah.
I remember Danielle pointing out, it's like, even some of the Star Wars movies, you've seen some of them, spoofed to death so often. Yeah. But she's like, practically every scene in Star Wars has probably been spoofed at some point.
I was there 3,000 years ago. I just saw a meme like that recently.
What about second breakfast?
But I guess while we're talking characters, I mean, that is definitive Gandalf.
Yeah. No argument here. But yeah, just to wrap up, like I've said a couple of times, it's crazy to think how seminal and landmark important of a movie this was in terms of pop culture. I mean, the direction CGI went after this, the direction of digital filmmaking, of series.
Series. And I think you're right. It kind of revitalized fantasy to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember that in the media, like in the early mid-2000s, there was a lot of, at first, the direction Hollywood went was like the historical epic. Mm-hmm. Like there were movies like Troy and Kingdom of Heaven and all these like big battle things. I thought that was what people wanted. And it was to an extent, but really even to this day, I mean, you have certain things like Game of Thrones and now Wheel of Time that like took the fantasy thing and went in an interesting direction. I guess we had the Narnia movies.
They tried Narnia. They tried Aragon.
Yeah,
and some other things like that. Never quite flew,
but like it still influenced a lot of things that even weren't necessarily just fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's fun to revisit it and see how it all started. And I don't know if we'll wind up waiting a year to get to the Two Towers, or if your kids are going to be chomping at the bit to see more. But we'll see. You said you're in the middle of Return of the King right now.
Yes, we are on just about at Mount Doom.
Cool.
That long trek in the sad area
of Mordor.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Mordor's too.
I love it in the movie. They were like Mordor. They were like
Mordor.
She's been mardored.
Wow. All right,
we better get out of here, guys.
On that silly note, thanks for listening to not the Weekly Hijack. This has been a sidetrack of Derailed Trains of Thoughts. We'll see when this episode comes out, but this will probably be the place of a normal episode for at least this month. I think the idea was for it to be a replacement for November. I was busy with play stuff in November, so this was an easier thing.
I'm sure we'll talk about the play in our
In our
actual
actual next
I would like
episode.
to talk about your play because it was very good.
Sure.
So.
Well, thank you very much. But until next time, folks, thanks for listening. This has been Tim.
This has been Nick.
And Natasha.
Bye bye.
Adios.